First contact and mockery. The warning lights flashed red across the bridge of the exploration vessel Endeavour as Captain Marcus Chen fought desperately with the controls. Sparks flew from damaged consoles while the ship shuddered under the stress of atmospheric entry. The hull groaned ominously as it cut through the alien atmosphere of the planet below. "Captain, we're losing hull integrity," shouted Dr. Sarah Walsh from her station, her voice barely audible over the screaming alarms. "The quantum drive is completely offline." Lieutenant Alex Rivera was already strapped into the pilot's seat, his hands dancing across the emergency controls. "I'm trying to level us out, but the navigation system is fried. We're going down whether we like it or not." Marcus gripped his captain's chair as the ship lurched violently to one side. Through the cracked view screen, he could see the surface of the planet rushing up to meet them. Purple and silver landscapes stretched out in all directions, with towering crystalline structures that gleamed like precious gems in the light of the system's twin suns. "Emergency positions," Marcus commanded. "Activate all emergency protocols." Crash came with a thunderous roar of twisted metal and shattered crystal. The Endeavour carved a deep furrow through what appeared to be a forest of glass-like trees before finally coming to rest against the base of a massive purple cliff. Steam rose from the wreckage as the ship systems slowly died one by one. Marcus awoke to the sound of his own labored breathing. His head throbbed, and he could taste blood in his mouth. The bridge was dark except for a few flickering emergency lights that cast eerie shadows across the twisted metal. He tried to move and immediately regretted it as pain shot through his left arm. "Sarah? Alex?" He called out, his voice hoarse. The only response was the settling groan of damaged metal and the distant sound of escaping gases. He forced himself to stand, using his good arm to pull himself upright. The communications console was completely destroyed, its screen shattered and circuits exposed. Marcus made his way through the damaged ship, calling out for his crew members. The corridors were twisted and debris-filled, making progress slow. And dangerous? He found evidence that both Sarah and Alex had survived the initial impact, but their stations were empty. Either they had evacuated or something had taken them, working his way to the cargo bay. Marcus was relieved to find that some of the emergency supplies had survived. He gathered what he could carry, including a basic medical kit, some food rations, and a portable spanner. His engineering training kicked in as he assessed the damage to the ship's systems. The quantum drive was completely destroyed, the communication array was offline, and the hull was cracked in a dozen places as he worked to stabilize the ship's remaining power systems. Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. There were tracks around the crash site. Large, three-toed impressions in the crystalline soil, and they were recent. Whatever had made them had been here after the crash. The sound of approaching engines made Marcus look up from his work. Through a gap in the damaged hull, he could see several vehicles approaching. They moved smoothly across the alien terrain, their sleek forms reflecting the purple light of the alien sky. As they drew closer, Marcus could see that they were definitely not human in design. The vehicles stopped about 50 meters from the wreckage, and their occupants emerged. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat as he got his first look at the aliens. They were tall, easily 7 feet in height, with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal. Their skin had a translucent quality that shifted between various shades of purple and silver, and their movements were fluid and graceful. 3 of the beings approached the wreck while the others remained with their vehicles. They wore what appeared to be armor made of the same crystalline material as their bodies, but with intricate patterns that pulsed with soft light. One of them, clearly the leader, carried a weapon that hummed with energy that Marcus knew he had little choice. He was injured, alone, and stranded on an alien world. His ship was destroyed, and his crew was missing. Fighting would only get him killed. Slowly, he emerged from the wreckage with his hands raised. The aliens stopped when they saw him, and Marcus could hear them communicating in a language that sounded like musical chimes mixed with the ringing of crystal bells. The leader stepped forward and spoke in accented but understandable English. So, the alien said, its voice carrying an unmistakable tone of amusement, this is what crashes onto our world. A primitive biped with crude technology. The other. Aliens made sounds that Marcus realized were laughter. I am High Commander Veltar of the Kithirian Imperial Guard, the leader continued. And you, little creature, are now property of the Kithirian Empire. Marcus tried to respond, but Veltar cut him off with a dismissive gesture. Do not attempt to communicate with us as equals. You are clearly from a species that has barely mastered basic spaceflight. Your vessel is primitive, your technology is crude, and your appearance is ... amusing. The other Kithirians seemed to find this hilarious, their crystal-like bodies actually chiming with laughter. One of them approached Marcus and began examining him like a scientist studying an interesting specimen. Look at its soft skin, the alien scientist said, poking Marcus with a crystal finger, and these primitive coverings it wears. How do such weak creatures survive in the void of space? Perhaps, Veltar said with obvious mockery. It comes from a world of other weak creatures. A planet where such pathetic beings think they can explore the galaxy and conquer other worlds. The laughter grew louder, and Marcus felt his jaw clench. He had served in the military before joining the exploration corps, and he had faced down enemies both human and otherwise. But never had he been treated with such casual contempt. I am not here to conquer anyone, Marcus said firmly. I am an explorer. My ship crashed during a routine survey mission. Ah, it speaks, Veltar exclaimed with delight. And it claims to be an explorer. How charming. Perhaps it was exploring ways to become less pathetic. The Kithirians loaded Marcus into one of their vehicles, treating him like a curious animal. They had found. As they traveled toward what appeared to be a massive city in the distance, Marcus used the time to observe and learn. The Kithirian spoke freely in front of him, clearly not considering him intelligent enough to understand their tactical discussions. What Marcus learned during that journey was both encouraging and disturbing. The Kithirians were incredibly advanced, technologically, with mastery over energy fields, crystalline construction, and faster than light travel. But they were also arrogant to a fault, convinced that their species was superior to all others in the galaxy. This one will provide excellent entertainment in the arena, Veltar was saying to his subordinates. The citizens will laugh themselves to exhaustion watching such a primitive creature attempt to survive. Should we not study it first? Asked. The scientist who Marcus learned was named Zareth. Its species might have some minor biological adaptations of interest. What could we possibly learn from such a crude life form? Veltar replied dismissively. No, it will go straight to the arena. The Emperor enjoys watching primitive species struggle for survival. The city that rose before them was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Towering spires of living crystal stretched up toward the sky, their surfaces reflecting and refracting, light in impossible patterns. The buildings seemed to grow from the ground itself, their organic curves and flowing lines creating a harmony between architecture and nature. But Marcus was not given time to admire the alien architecture. He was quickly processed through what appeared to be a detention facility, where his belongings were taken and catalogued. The Kithirians handling him continued to treat him as an amusing curiosity rather than a potential threat. Look at its primitive tools, one guard said, examining Marcus's multi-tool. Such crude construction. How do these creatures accomplish anything with such basic implements? Marcus was then transported to what the Kithirians called the arena. Of displays, a massive amphitheater carved from a single enormous crystal. The arena floor was covered with a variety of obstacles and challenges, clearly designed to test the abilities of whatever creatures were placed there. As Marcus was led into a holding cell beneath the arena, he could hear the sounds of a crowd gathering above. The Kithirians were coming to see the show, to laugh at the primitive human who had crashed onto their world. Enjoy your time here, little creature, Veltar said as the energy barrier sealed Marcus's cell. Tomorrow you will provide entertainment for the entire city. Try not to disappoint us with too quick a death. Left alone in his cell, Marcus began to take stock of his situation. He was injured, alone, and trapped on an alien world. His ship was destroyed, his crew was missing, and he was about to be thrown into an arena for the amusement of beings who considered him barely above an animal. But Marcus had not survived 3 tours of duty in the Terran colonial wars and 7 years of deep space exploration by giving up when things looked impossible. He began to examine his cell, looking for weaknesses in its construction. The energy barrier was sophisticated, but it was also standardized, designed to hold creatures that fit Cytherian assumptions about what constituted a threat. Marcus smiled grimly as he began to plan. The Cytherians had made one crucial mistake. They had assumed that because his technology was different, it was primitive. They had assumed that because he looked weak, he was helpless. They had assumed that because he was alone, he was defeated. They were about to learn that humans had not become a spacefaring species by accepting defeat. They were about to discover that humanity's greatest strength was not advanced technology or superior firepower, but the ability to adapt, survive, and turn any situation to their advantage. As the sounds of the gathering crowd grew louder above him, Marcus began to work. He had engineering training, military experience, and most importantly, he had something the Cytherians had never encountered before: human determination, fueled by the need to survive and rescue his crew. The arena would indeed provide entertainment tomorrow. But the Cytherians were about to discover that they had gravely underestimated their newest attraction. Marcus Chun was about to show them what humanity was really capable of. The human factor unleashed. The morning sun cast brilliant rays through the crystal amphitheater as thousands of Cytherians gathered to witness what they expected to be a brief but amusing spectacle. Emperor Crixin himself had arrived to observe the primitive human, his massive crystalline form reflecting rainbow patterns across the arena floor. Marcus stood in the center of the arena, appearing small and vulnerable beneath the towering crystal walls. The Cytherians in the stands pointed and laughed, their chiming voices creating a symphony of mockery that echoed throughout the massive structure. Citizens of the Cytherian Empire, High Commander Veltar's amplified voice boomed across the arena. Behold the creature that dared to crash upon our sacred world. Watch as this primitive being struggles against challenges that even our younglings could overcome. The crowd erupted in laughter, but Marcus remained calm. During his night in the cell, he had not been idle. Using materials salvaged from his damaged clothing and improvised tools created from the cell's fixtures, he had prepared for this moment. Hidden within his remaining garments were small devices he had crafted using his engineering knowledge and what little he understood of Cytherian technology. The first challenge was released into the arena: a crystalline predator to Cytheria. Prime. The creature was beautiful and deadly, its body composed of razor-sharp crystal formations that could slice through metal. It moved with liquid grace as it circled Marcus, looking for the best angle of attack. The crowd fell silent, expecting to see the human torn apart within moments. Instead, Marcus did something unexpected. He stood perfectly still and began to whistle. The sound was soft at first, barely audible over the creature's crystalline footsteps. But as Marcus modulated the pitch and frequency, something remarkable happened. The predator slowed, then stopped entirely. Its crystal body began to resonate with the sound, creating a harmonic frequency that seemed to calm the creature. Impossible, Emperor Crixin muttered from his observation platform. How does the primitive know our resonance techniques? Marcus had spent his time in the cell analyzing the acoustic properties of Cytherian crystal technology. Everything in their civilization was based on harmonic frequencies, and he had guessed that their native creatures might be susceptible to the same principles. The crowd murmured in confusion as Marcus approached the now docile predator and gently placed his hand on its crystalline hide. The creature made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze and settled down beside him. Lucky guess, Beltar announced, though his voice carried less confidence than before. Release the next challenge. What came next was a series of technological puzzles designed to test problem-solving abilities. Complex crystalline mechanisms not required specific sequences to operate. Energy field manipulations that demanded precise understanding of Cytherean physics. The Cythereans expected Marcus to fail immediately. Instead, they watched in growing amazement as he approached each puzzle with methodical precision. Where Cytherean solutions relied on established patterns and traditional approaches, Marcus used unconventional methods that worked despite being completely different from their expectations. For a mechanism that required precise harmonic resonance, Marcus used percussion and rhythm. For an energy field that demanded specific crystalline configurations, he used improvised materials and creative positioning. Each solution was crude by Cytherean standards, but undeniably effective. How is this possible? Scientist Zaris whispered. To her colleagues in the observation area, its methods should not work. They violate every principle of proper technique. But Marcus was just getting started. During the night, he had also fashioned a small communication device from components salvaged from his cell. As he worked through the arena challenges, he was also scanning for signs of his missing crew members. The device chimed softly in his ear. He had found them. Dr. Sarah Walsh and Lieutenant Alex Rivera were being held in the research complex adjacent to the arena. The signal was weak but clear enough to give Marcus their location. Now he needed to create a distraction large, enough to allow him to escape and mount a rescue operation. The final challenge appeared to be the most dangerous yet. A combat scenario against automated Cytherean defense drones. These sleek crystalline machines were armed with energy weapons and programmed with advanced tactical algorithms. They were designed to test the combat capabilities of captured creatures. The drones activated and immediately began coordinated attack patterns, their energy beams creating a deadly light show across the arena floor. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation, certain that this would finally be the end of the strange human's luck. Instead, Marcus did something that no Cytherean would have considered. He ran directly toward the nearest drone. The machine's programming was designed to handle opponents who would seek cover, retreat, or attempt to fight from a distance. It was not prepared for someone to charge straight at it with apparent disregard for personal safety. Marcus slid beneath the drone's energy beam and used his improvised tools to access its underside control panel. His fingers worked quickly, applying the same unconventional problem-solving approach he had used on the puzzles. Within seconds, the drone's programming was confused enough that it began targeting its companions instead of Marcus. The crowd gasped as the defense drones began firing on each other, their perfect coordination destroyed by Marcus's intervention. One by one, they destroyed themselves while Marcus remained untouched. Emperor Crixon rose from his throne, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. This is impossible. No primitive creature should be able to overcome our technology. Your Majesty, Zara said quietly. Perhaps this creature is not as primitive as we assumed. But Marcus was already moving. The destruction of the drones had created chaos in the arena's control systems, exactly as he had planned. Emergency protocols were activating, and security barriers were retracting to allow maintenance access. Marcus reached into his clothing and activated the devices he had hidden there. They were not weapons, but sophisticated signal jammers and electromagnetic pulse generators, created using his understanding of how Cytherean technology interfaced with their crystal-based systems. The effect was immediate and dramatic throughout. The arena complex, systems began failing in cascading waves. Lights flickered, gravity generators stuttered, and security barriers wavered. It's some kind of attack, Beltar shouted, reaching for his weapon. But his crystalline armor's power systems were also affected by Marcus's devices. The High Commander found himself struggling with equipment that no longer responded properly. To his commands, Marcus was already running. He had memorized the layout of the complex during his transport, and the chaos he had created provided the perfect cover for his escape. As alarms began sounding throughout the city, he made his way toward the research facility where his crew was being held. The rescue was swift and efficient. Sarah and Alex had been held in cells, similar to his own, designed more for containment. Then, high security. Marcus's improvised tools made quick work of the locking mechanisms, and within minutes the three humans were reunited. Marcus. Sarah embraced him quickly before stepping back to look at him with amazement. How did you escape? The entire city is in chaos. Later, Marcus replied, handing them equipment he had salvaged during his escape. Right now, we need to get back to the ship. Can either of you tell me what they were doing to you? Alex hefted an improvised weapon Marcus had created from Cytherian components. They were studying us like lab specimens, trying to figure out how our primitive biology could survive in space. They kept talking about how impossible we were. Sarah nodded grimly. They're convinced that we represent some kind of threat to their empire, but they can't understand how. Their entire worldview is based on the assumption that advanced technology equals superiority. Then let's show them how wrong they are. Marcus said the journey back to the crash site was harrowing but successful. Marcus had created additional chaos throughout the city by activating more of his improvised devices, keeping the Cytherian security forces busy with system failures and false alarms. When they reached the Endeavor, Marcus was relieved to find that his initial repairs had held. The ship was still badly damaged, but its basic systems were functional. Can we get a message out? Sarah asked as she worked to restore the communication systems. Better than that, Alex replied from the pilot's station. I'm picking up a signal. It's faint, but it's definitely human. Marcus felt a surge of hope. The exploration fleet looks like it. They're still 3 days out, but they're coming this way. As if summoned by their conversation, several Cytherian vehicles appeared on the horizon, moving rapidly toward the crash site. Emperor Crixon himself was leading the pursuit, his massive form visible even at a distance. So, Sarah said as she finished initializing the communications array, what's the plan? Marcus smiled as he activated the ship's remaining defense. Systems. We show them what humanity is really capable of. The final confrontation took place in the crystalline forest where the Endeavor had crashed. Emperor Crixon approached with a full military escort, expecting to recapture 3 primitive creatures who had gotten lucky in their escape. Instead, he found 3 humans who had used the time since their escape to turn the crash site into a fortress of improvised technology and adaptive tactics. Surrender immediately, the Emperor commanded, his voice amplified by his suit's speakers. You have caused enough chaos with your primitive tricks. Marcus stepped forward, no longer appearing small or vulnerable. His time among the Cytherians had taught him much about their psychology and weaknesses. Your Majesty, Marcus replied. Formally, we are not primitive creatures. We are explorers from the planet Earth, and we represent the human species. Impossible, Crixon snarled. No species so crude could challenge the Cytherian Empire. That's where you're wrong, Sarah added, stepping up beside Marcus. You've made the classic mistake of confusing different with inferior. Alex emerged from behind the ship's wreckage, carrying a device that hummed with barely contained energy. Our technology isn't crude. It's adaptable. We don't rely on one way of doing things because we've learned that flexibility is more valuable than perfection. The Emperor's forces prepared to attack, but Marcus held up his hand. Before you do something you'll regret, you should know that we've already contacted our fleet. They'll be here in 3 days. 3 ships cannot challenge the Cytherian Empire. Veltar shouted. Marcus smiled. Who said anything about 3 ships? High above them, barely visible against the purple sky, shapes began to appear. Not ships, but satellites, probes, and surveillance devices that had been deployed by the human exploration fleet weeks ago. We've been watching your world since before we ever landed, Marcus explained. Studying your technology, your culture, your military capabilities. You thought we were primitive because our crash ship was damaged? But that ship was never meant for combat. Zarath, who had been studying the devices Marcus's team had used, looked up with growing alarm. Your Majesty. These humans, their technology is not primitive. It's completely different from ours, but it's incredibly sophisticated. The question now, Sarah said diplomatically, is whether we're going to be enemies or friends. Emperor Crixon stared at the three humans for a long moment. Everything he had believed about galactic hierarchy and technological superiority was crumbling around him. You offer friendship to the Cytherian Empire? He asked cautiously. Marcus nodded. We offer cooperation, trade, exchange of knowledge. We have much to learn from each other. The Emperor looked at his advisors, then back at the humans. Slowly, he deactivated his weapons and gestured for his forces to do the same. Perhaps, he said with newfound respect, we have underestimated your species, Captain Marcus Chun of Earth. As the three humans and their former captors began the first tentative negotiations between their species, Marcus reflected on what had just occurred. The Cytherians had learned that strength came in many forms, and that underestimating an opponent, based on appearances, was a dangerous mistake. But more importantly, they had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or firepower, but the ability to adapt, survive, and turn any challenge into an opportunity. 3 days later, when the human exploration fleet arrived at Cytheria Prime, they found not a rescue mission, but the beginning of a new alliance between two species who had much to teach each other about the galaxy they shared.